Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Issei. Today we are gonna see what if Issei joined the Phenex family. Part 3. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Scene, unknown home, Kuo. Nice try, little devil. Oh, now you're trying too hard, it's so precious. Missed again, you little shit. As this psychotic-looking priest dodged each of Issei's attacks with ease, he looked over toward little Ravel, who was standing in the middle of the room with her eyes held shut. I know, maybe I'll give that cute one a few holes, Swiss cheese style, what do you say? Seemed as though this crazy man was not paying attention to Issei, as his jaw felt a sudden sting to it. Punch. Issei watched as his gauntleted fist connected with the face of this white-haired menace, only to have the priest fly backwards and through a level of drywall. Crash. Taking a deep breath, Issei looked firstly at Ravel and then his gauntlet. Boost. Boost. Issei then looked at the large hole in the wall, waiting for this strange man to get back to his feet. Get your punk ass up, I ain't finished with you. Ravel heard Issei and slowly opened one eye. She immediately noticed the now unconscious nun, which made her want to help. Seeing the girl suddenly cough, Ravel ran over and kneeled down next to her. Issei, I don't think she's going to make it. She has multiple gut wounds, not to mention her limbs. Ravel begins to sob softly as she takes hold of one of the nun's mangled hands. Issei grinds his teeth. Come on, get out here. Don't make me come in there. Still facing the large hole, Issei then speaks in a quiet voice. Ravel, please, if there is anything you can do, don't let her die. Ravel sighed sadly. Issei, we have a healing medicine called Phoenix Tears, and I have a vial. But her injuries, they are too much, even for such a potion. Poor girl. Damn it, what kind of monster are you? Issei screamed as tears flew from his eyes. Oh no, cough cough, do you have a weakness for little blondes or something? The white-haired priest stepped out from the broken wall as he casually patted the dust from his clothes. Why? Boost. Issei grunted. Boost. Why? With his pistol still in one hand, the man casually shrugged. I suppose it's because she wasn't following my orders. The man then showed a very crazy grin as his tongue stuck out in an unnatural fashion. Maybe it's because I have a weakness for blondes too. Blondes that betrayed the church by using her powers to save a filthy devil. A weakness for making her holy. Remembering the state of the bleeding nun behind him, her body was riddled with punctures. Hearing this disgusting joke from the crazy man, Issei couldn't help but want to hurt him, badly. Boost. Boost. Issei felt incredible even though he was beyond angry. Taking the time to place his feet properly, the enraged teen made a single step forward while his fist was prepared for a strike. Instantly, as he was moving forward and to his version of events, the room they were in seemed to blur as Issei's speed was incredible. The white-haired man seemed to crash back into his original hull as the sound of multiple walls being destroyed could be heard. Meanwhile, Issei stood next to the broken drywall with his fist raised. That felt good. Issei took a deep breath. Ravel screamed from behind. You, go after that freak, I'll figure something out, don't worry about it. Turning around to get a look at the little Phoenix princess, Issei watched as she was kneeling near a dying and blonde nun. Ravel had a very serious look on her face as she held the girl's hand. I won't let her die, Issei. Ravel nodded. Issei nodded back and rushed his way through the hole in the wall. Ravel looked back down at the dying girl as she showed a warm smile. Don't worry, the pain will stop soon and you'll be as good as new. Just give me 1 second. Using her free hand, the little devil reached above her head as a small fiery and orange portal appeared. Once manifested, Ravel continued to reach through the portal as she soon pulled back her hand while holding a small and golden-colored box. The small fiery circle dissipated as Ravel opened the box, which revealed a velvet and felt-like material on the inside. Looking back at the nun, Ravel's attention was drawn to the girl's hands. You have a sacred gear, don't you, hun? Ravel reached with her free hand and pulled a chess piece from the golden box. Magic, huh? Okay, well I think this should suffice. Ravel's warm smile remained as she placed a polished and orange-colored bishop piece on the girl's chest. The blonde nun coughs violently, and Ravel doesn't risk wasting another moment as she releases the girl's hand. Okay, do your thing, evil piece. Live for me from now on, Ravel was trying to remember what that crazy guy called her. Well, nun lady. No, wait, live for me, Asia-chan. Ravel holds out both of her hands over the blonde girl, as orange and yellow energy seems to be emanating from both parties involved. Issei noticed a gold-colored light coming from behind him through the hole. Everything okay out there, Ravel-chan? As we pan out on a dusty Issei, we notice that he is holding onto the neck of an unconscious crazy priest. The once flawless face of the man was now that of hamburger as Issei slowly began to make his way out and back into the main room where this light was coming from. Oh, yeah. Yay, it worked. Oh, Issei, yeah, don't worry, I'm okay. Ravel's voice sounded overjoyed. Pulling the priest's body through the hole after himself, Issei could see Ravel, still kneeling where she was, however the nun, was sitting upward. Dropping the limp and unconscious white-haired man onto the hard floor, Issei ran over toward both girls while crouching down. "Are you both okay?" Ravel smiles brightly while holding onto both of Asia's shaking hands. "I'm alright and so is my new bestie, Asia-chan." Asia looks around at both Issei and then Ravel as her green eyes wander back and forth. Hello. Thank you for saving me." Issei couldn't help but notice how cute this nun was. Through her hood, the girl had long and flowing golden hair. Her skin was pale, and her figure was delightfully petite. Hearing the man on the floor making a groaning sound, Issei turned his attention back onto the freak of a person while showing a scowl. "What's up with this guy? Miss Asia, were you and him working together?" Asia takes a large and dry gulp before slowly nodding. Ravel looks back at the priest. He looks to be an exorcist. That gun of his looked like it was from the church, he's probably got other weapons on his person. Issei replies as he begins to frisk the priest. "Exorcist? How's that?" Asia interrupts. Fried and I are both outcasts of the church." "Fried?" Ravel shows an intrigued expression. "Fried Selzen." Asia frowns. Selzen, that last name sounds familiar." "Oh, wait, your name is Asia and you said you were also an outcast." "Asia, is your last name Argento?" Ravel's blue eyes began to widen. Asia nodded. "I am Asia Argento." "Oh, wow. Score." Ravel was now swaying Asia's arms along with her own in excitement. "I've heard about you. So, that's why your sacred gear seemed familiar. You've got twilight healing." Issei scratched the back of his head while smiling nervously as Asia had a confused and confounding blush. "Yes, I can heal people." Asia's blush intensified. Issei tilted his head while noticing that Asia's mortal wounds looked to be less mortal. Yes, she was still in bad shape, but she looked to be in a stabilized condition. "Ravel-chan, I thought you said those phoenix tears wouldn't work on her, so how?" Issei looked back at Asia and then at Ravel again. Ravel stood up and showed a warm smile. "Issei, Asia Argento is now my first bishop. I turned her into a devil." Asia's eyes suddenly increased in size by 2 times. "What?" Issei gained a frown. "Oh. Was there nothing else that could be done? I'm a devil and to think that I thought the Lord hath forsaken me when I was merely an outcast, but a devil no." Asia attempted to stand up, but her wounds made her fall back to the floor, however, to her surprise, the boy named Issei was holding her up in a bridal style. "I'm scared." Asia turned her head into Issei's chest and proceeded to make a muffled scream. Issei looks back at Ravel, who now has a very worried frown. "You did the right thing, Ravel-chan. I'm proud of you, saving her life as you did. You're a good person." Ravel nods, however her frown remains. "I didn't have time to tell her, I'm sorry." Issei looks down at the crying Asia. "Hey, Asia-chan, is it? Look, it's going to be okay. I'm a devil too and you know what?" Asia looks back up at a now smiling Issei. "What?" Sniff sniff. "Turns out that devils are just like people, you've got good ones and you've got bad ones. So far, the only bad things I've met are angels and priests, but I'm sure there are good ones too. I can vouch for Ravel-chan over here. She's one of the really good ones." Issei nodded while maintaining his smile. Asia looked over Issei's shoulder and at Ravel. "You're a good devil." Ravel's frown turned upside down as her smile was very contagious. "Asia-chan, nobody is ever going to hurt you again. My peerage is going to adore you." Asia blushes. "Okay, please take care of me." Issei nods. "Alright, now that that's out of the way, what are we gonna do with your freed buddy over here?" Ravel shrugs. "Well, I would say that we could let mother handle him, but..." Issei makes a worried frown. "Spankings." Ravel nods. "For everyone involved." Issei thinks hard. "Well, I could have the president take care of this bastard. She'd know what to do." Ravel shakes her head rapidly. "No. Sona Sitri would take you from me. Out of the question." Before another word could be uttered, the sounds of multiple footsteps could be heard, approaching from the home entrance. Ravel runs up to Issei and hugs his torso, while the teen is still holding Asia. "Eek, did you hear that?" Issei quietly nods. "Yeah, but I think it's..." Issei, a very familiar voice, spoke out as the approaching people could now be seen. None other than Sona Sitri, Tsubaki Shinra, Ria's Gremory, Akeno Himejima and Kaneko Taoju were standing in the hallway. Then a crashing sound could be heard from behind Issei. Crash. Walking through yet another large hole, this time coming from the back side of the home, Tsubasa Yura came marching forward while brushing her fists off of drywall material. Turning his attention back onto a now confused-looking Sona, Issei glanced at both Ravel and then the girl in his arms, Asia. President, I can explain." Scene, Phenex Mansion. Walking down one of the large and golden embroidered hallways was Riser Phenex. She was wearing a maroon-colored nightie while carrying a large and comfy pillow in her arms. Having a small frown on her face, Riser looked to be in some kind of personal dilemma. Riser doesn't need to explain anything. All I need to do is demand that I be allowed in, and before he has a chance to say anything else, I'll just a blush forms on the golden-haired woman's cheeks. I'll take him. Simple. Almost walking past the door she was headed for, Riser took a moment and a deep breath before proceeding to knock softly. Placing a hand near her mouth, Riser blew some air so that she could smell her own breath. Satisfied that there was nothing offensive, the woman continued to wait. Not getting any response, Riser knocked again, this time a bit more loudly. Hyoudou, PxD, I'm coming in. Then Riser slowly turned the door handle and peeked inside. Scene, Phenex mansion, pretending to be sleeping him. Well, that's fine, I don't mind a little bit of role-playing, haha. Riser tossed her pillow on the other side of what seemed to be a sleeping Issei, tucked under the covers. Quickly getting onto the bed where the pillow had been tossed, the buxom woman laid down and wrapped one leg around the mass under the sheets. You feel, well, really soft. Something was wrong, why did Issei feel like a body pillow? Grinding her teeth, Riser flipped over the covers only to reveal several bunched-up blankets in the shape of a sleeping person. Nani? As her jaw slowly dropped, Riser's confused and almost cute expression quickly changed into something dark and angry. This is Ravel's doing. Scene, Alice's Tea Party Maid Cafe, second level basement. Please, lay her down on the sofa, I'll bring some wet towels and a blanket. Tsubaki directed Issei as the boy was still carrying Asia. Sona looked over at Ravel with a stern expression. So first, you and your older sister kidnapped my pawn. Then I have to go through this stupid political bull in order to retrieve him back from the lot of you. Add the fact that I have to win him back, as if he is some prize, in a rating game of all things. Sona looks furious as she stares down at Ravel. Now I come to find out that you've put Hyoudou in danger. Ravel shakes her head angrily. Not true. At least not the last part. I went against my mother's wishes and brought Issei here so he could see his family. My intentions were to give him some relief, that's all. I certainly was not planning on running into a stray exorcist, I can promise you that. Sona was going to interject, that was until Tsubasa interrupted. President, what do you want me to do with that? Sona's rook looked down at a still unconscious Fried Selzen. Leave him to me. Ria stood from a comfy chair while Akeno and Kaneko both stood from their love seat. Sona tilts her head while adjusting her glasses. Why? And to what end? Ria's grinned slightly. Information. Asia Argento said it herself, they are stray exorcists. Aside from relentlessly killing humans all due to their involvement with devil contracts, the facts are that we share this territory and this enemy was in our territory. I need to find out why, by whatever means I find necessary. Issei could hear what was being said, however he was distracted as Asia began to glow the color of green. Holding both of her arms out over her limbs, twin rings could be seen, manifested on both hands as the green energy seemed to intensify. Slowly, each and every wound on the little blonde body had healed over without leaving so much as a scar behind. Asia, wow, that is amazing. Issei, feeling rather exhausted, focused a bit which released his sacred gear, making his gauntlet vanish. The blonde nun blushes a bit. Oh, it's nothing really. But hey, are you hurt anywhere? Let me take a look. Rubbing the back of his head, Issei shook his head while smiling. Nah, I'm cool, that freak dude was a bitch. Asia nods. Alright then, Hyoudou-senpai. Senpai? What? Issei had his hands held out in a surprised expression. You're my senior devil, right? I assume you are in Ravel-sama's peerage, as I am? Asia has a hopeful expression. Yeah, about that, it's complicated. Issei rubs his head a bit harder. Issei is in my peerage. Sona stomped her foot down. Looking over toward the others, Issei stared back at Sona as his heart began to beat harder. Sona, I am really sorry about all of this. Asia looked as if her heart was about to break, however she kept a brave smile on her face. I see. Sona's eyes softened the moment she could see the turmoil in her pawn's warm and brown eyes. Issei, it's alright. Like I told you before, you did nothing wrong. The Sitri heiress then smiled ever so slightly. Issei, who was feeling a warm blanket tighten over his aching body, nods. Thanks, President. It's okay, you can call. Sona stopped mid-sentence as Ravel, Riaz, Akeno, Kaneko and Tsubasa all stared back at her with questioning glances. Feeling on the spot, Sona scans the room attempting to find something to change this awkward situation and subject. Her eyes land on a bound and beat up Fried. Ahem, so, Riaz, you were saying, involving the priest, how are you going to get information out of him? A moment of dreadful and awkward silence took over the room for about 10 seconds before Akeno spoke up while showing a smile with a slight grin behind it. I think I should explain. President. Akeno made a polite bow. Riaz nods while also showing a similar expression as her queen. Firstly, Sitri-sama, do you happen to own a pool within this complex of yours? Akeno then closes her eyes as her smile remains. Sona nods. Yes, Olympic, down the hallway and to your left. Wonderful. Might you be so kind as to allow me to borrow it for a few hours? Akeno then bows once more. Sona shrugs her shoulders. I don't see why not, but what does this have to do with Fried? Akeno lifts her hand into the air and then licks her finger. Instantly, her held-out index finger was making yellow and crackling sparks. While she did this, a blush formed over her grinning face. Issei could see a very scary Akeno-senpai, one that he has never seen before. Asia also looked to be frightened as she was clearly shaking. Ravel shook her head and walked back toward Issei and Asia. I don't like this kinda stuff, count me out. Ravel had a disgusted expression. Sona looked back at Issei while showing her stoic expression. You need to understand that people such as this Fried character, well, they usually are tied in with supernatural alliances, ones that seek to disrupt the balance of peace between the biblical factions. They are terrorists, Issei. Also, look at what he did to that family. Do you think they were his first victims? No, Fried Selzen is a monster and deserves whatever is coming to him. However, Sona turns back toward Rias. I still do not condone such behavior. If this were happening back on campus, you can sure as hell know that I wouldn't allow it. Ria shrugs her shoulders. I don't like the idea either, but it's as you said, he's a monster. At this point, I don't see him as anything more than a stray devil, and you know how we deal with those, right, Sona? Rias folds her arms. Whatever, just leave me out of it. Sona walks away from Rias, Akeno and Kaneko, who stand near the laid-out and bound Fried Selzen. Akeno looks down at the sleeping white-haired priest and can't help but anticipate his interrogation. Ara, don't worry, I'm sure he can handle his punishment. Akeno blushes deeply. Tsubaki enters the room with both wet towels and a large comfy blanket. What did I miss? Sona shook her head. Nothing much, but I do think we should have a talk. The Sitri heiress looks at Ravel. The Phoenix girl nods seriously. Asia, Ravel, Tsubaki, Sona and Issei walk into another room while leaving Fried Selzen to Ria's peerage. Ria's turned her attention to the silent Kaneko. Help Akeno please. I need to head back to the Orc and speak with my brother. I just hope that these stray exorcists aren't part of something more dangerous. Kaneko nods and reaches down while hoisting Fried's body over her shoulder. Okay, boss lady. Looking back at a blushing Akeno, Ria shows a hint of worry. Don't go too overboard, okay? Akeno nods over enthusiastically. I'll behave, President. Scene, Phenex Mansion. Not in your room either. Okay, Ravel, now I know you have something to do with all of this. Riser looked furious as she walked out of her younger sister's bedroom. Thinking for a moment, Riser figured they may be hiding in one of Ravel's peerage members' rooms. Yeah, Riser ain't dumb, good try sis, but I'm gonna find Issei. Feeling determined, Riser grew a smirk on her once grumpy-looking face and proceeded down another long and winding hallway. Scene, Alice's Tea Party Maid Cafe, basement pool. The sounds of water dripping could be heard, echoing throughout this windowless complex. Opening his swollen eyes, Fried Selzen realized that it was impossible to move. Realizing that his lower half felt wet, the crazed priest looked down. Seeing his reflection, as he was half submerged in the water, Fried was horrified to see the state of his own face. No, what have they done to my beautiful mug? Struggling, Fried realized he was dangling from a rope which was tied to the ceiling of this indoor pool room. His arms and legs were bound and there was nothing he could do. Awake are we? Fried slowly took his eyes off of his own reflection and looked forward. Akeno Himejima was standing near the steps that lead into the pool itself. She was wearing white and red priestess attire, along with a menacing black and leather apron. It looked like something you would see a butcher wearing as it looked to be permanently stained with splatters of blood of past victims. Akeno smiled very warmly while pacing slowly back and forth. What are you filthy devils gonna do? You should be the ones who are afraid of me. Wahahaha. Fried struggled as he laughed madly. Kaneko, who walked from the entrance while carrying a large net of volleyballs, scowled toward the fallen priest. I'd shut up if I were you, creep. Akeno giggles. Phew. Well, let's get him into a talking mood, shall we? Talking? Ha, you wanna talk to me? What is this, some kinda kinky date? Well, can't say that I'm not into this, especially that little one over there, but Fried immediately screamed in agony as the pool was lit with arching and golden-colored electricity. Aig. Akeno, who was now licking her index finger, blushed intensely as her body language suggested a hint of arousal. Ara, your voice sounds so much prettier when you go all falsetto like that. Kaneko takes out one of the volleyballs from the next and bounces it off the tile floor a few times before looking back at Fried, who was now huffing and puffing after a nice jolt from Akeno. Hey, freak, who are you working for? Kaneko showed zero emotion. Fried looked back up at Kaneko and instantly smirked. A little girl and her ball, how cute. Kaneko shrugs and proceeds to launch said volleyball into Fried's stomach at Mach speed. VOW. HHHH. Cough, UGGGH. Fried hunched over as much as he could as the volleyball hit him with such force that he could swear a rib or two had been broken. Bitch. You fucking bitch. Ah. Fried was screaming again as the pool lit up with golden arches once again. Akeno looked to be enjoying this as she spoke loudly. Ara, how much more of this can you take before you start answering questions? I sure hope you keep that cute and stubborn tongue from blabbering anything too quickly. Be a good puppy and endure for me, won't you? Akeno then casts another holy lightning directly into the pool once more. Ugh. Fried continued to agonize in pain. Kaneko held another volleyball and repeated her question. Who are you working for, scum? Finally able to talk again, Fried stared back at Kaneko while his bloodshot eyes screamed bloody murder. I work for Santa Claus and you know what? You've been a very naughty little devil bitch who needs to fucking ayaha. Fried had received another volleyball hit but this time toward his groin. Nutcracker shot. Kaneko spoke in an uncaring tone. Akeno giggled. Phew. You're funny, Kaneko-chan. Scene, Alice's Tea Party Maid Cafe, basement pool. Ah. Fuck both of you, bitches. Fried was still dangling from the rope as it swung from the ceiling. Akeno ended her tormenting lightning attack aimed at the pool itself. Ara, that was level 4. I figured that you've been enjoying level 3 a little too much, so I upped the amps. Please, along with the information we need, I would love to hear your personal opinions regarding your pain levels. Again though, after you tell us about your boss. Kaneko looked back at an empty net that originally contained at least 50 volleyballs. Frustratingly, the white-haired girl looked back at the pool. Floating randomly was all of Kaneko's ammunition, though a few of the balls looked to be charred and slightly cindering on the tops. Staring back at a miserable-looking Fried, Kaneko speaks while showing no emotion. Scumbag, are you ready to talk? It's getting late and I'm getting hungry too. Fried turns his sore neck and looks back at the white-haired girl as a grin takes over his exhausted and beat-up face. Oh, the poor little baby is hungry and tired too. Don't worry, let me out of these ropes and I'll feed you. The crazed priest was now sticking his tongue out in a sick display of perversion. Akeno turned her attention to Fried's situation. Ropes huh? Actually, you made a valid point. Kaneko, I believe his legs are getting tired of being halfway submerged. How about you do me a solid and lower him a bit, perhaps say, his waist. The black-haired senpai begins to grin maliciously. Kaneko nods as she unties the end, which is attached to the pool ladder. Slowly, the smaller girl relieves some tension as Fried's body is lowered further into the water. Wait, why? Fried now looked concerned. As Kaneko finished tying off the rope, Akeno happily explained. Electricity is a funny thing. As of now, I've only been giving you small bits of static which were directed at your legs. Now, I'm going to use more wattage to the water, and this time, your lower extremities are directly exposed. Hey now, don't do that, I was just kidding. How about we just be civil about this, and maybe I might be able to discuss my work over dinner or something. Fried's eyes widened in terror. Akeno nods while closing her eyes. Yes, I'm sure that's exactly what you would do if our situations were reversed. Naturally, I am a civil woman, so I can appreciate your words just now, however placing her index finger into the air, larger and scarier looking electricity begins to manifest. That house we found you in, well, that wasn't the only family that you've slaughtered, now is it? Akeno blushes as she lets the lightning arch touch the water. Ah. My balls. Fried screams in sheer agony. After several minutes of this, Akeno releases the lightning spell as she looks to be very excited. Ara, I couldn't help myself, seeing you struggling like that on level 4. So I imagine your nether regions are feeling a bit tender right now. It's okay, you can tell me, doggy. Akeno was happy to see a shaking and terrified enemy at her mercy. Fried wasn't able to speak as the continuous jolts of electricity caused him to momentarily lapse into a moment of madness. Brug. Kaneko watched as the insane-looking priest began to foam from his mouth. I think you broke him, Akeno. Tilting her head, Akeno stomped her foot down. I ask you a question, doggy. Akeno screamed out. Instantly, Fried was drawn from wherever he was and nodded immediately. Yes, mistress. He drooled out the words which were accompanied by foam and snot. Akeno looked back at Kaneko while showing a satisfied expression. You were saying? Kaneko rolls her eyes. Scumbag, who do you work for? I can't tell you. He'll kill me and everyone else here if he. Ah. Fried was instantly in pain once again as Akeno electrified the pool while smiling warmly. Scene, Alice's Tea Party Maid Cafe, basement room. I don't care if he is the person that saved you. It doesn't give you the right to just take away my pawn. Sona lashed out a bit in anger. I'm not saying that it was right either, but still. Ravel attempted to argue back. Asia and Issei were sitting on Sona's large and canopy-style bed, while Ravel and Sona stood while arguing. Tsubaki, who was standing near the bed, looked down at Issei while speaking in a quiet voice. You know, the president has had you on her mind since the whole incident. But you didn't hear that from me. Looking back up at the vice president of the student council, Issei saw her actually smiling just ever so slightly. Really? I never would have guessed that Issei stopped talking the moment Tsubaki placed her index finger to her own lips, conveying that he be quiet. Asia looked back at the two girls who were arguing and then back at Issei while frowning slightly. Ravel-sama seems very nice, but I don't like the idea that we aren't in the same peerage, senpai. Issei smiles. I'm sure everything will work out. Also, just like Ravel, the president is a really good devil too, just like Tsubaki, right? Issei looks back up at a now blushing Tsubaki. Looking startled, the usually cold vice president adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. You think I'm nice? Issei nods. I think you are a very giving person who goes out of her way to help whenever you see something out of place. So yeah, I do think you're nice. Oh, well thanks. Tsubaki turns around so as to not show her bright red face. Hyoudou? What did you say to Tsubaki just now? She looks sick or something. Sona pointed over at the three near her bed. I'm not sick, President, it's more like, Tsubaki stuttered. Ravel blinked a few times while wondering what was happening. Issei and Asia both froze at the situation. Instantly, Tsubaki ran out of the room while covering her face with both hands. I'm sorry, I have to go. Eek. The room goes completely silent as the occupants stare randomly at one another while shrugging their shoulders in confusion. Scene, Alice's Tea Party Maid Cafe, basement pool. Stop, please. I'll talk. Fried was crying from his swollen eyes as his body had arcs of electricity bouncing off of him and back into the water. Not stopping her lightning spell, Akeno playfully tilts her head while smiling. I don't know, doggy. I am not really feeling the motivation in your tone. The sadistic queen then upped her magical spell to level 6. Wahhhhh. Ah. Fried was drooling as his eyes bulged from his sockets. Now what was it that you were trying to tell me? Akeno cutely held out her ear. Said Yuma. I'll talk, Mistress, Ag. Fried managed to spit out his words while his body jerked violently. Oh fine then, party pooper. Akeno licks her finger and the electricity stops. The now steaming and randomly charged Fried speaks as quickly as he can. Cockabale. I indirectly work for Cockabale. Scene, Alice's Tea Party Maid Cafe, basement room. Hey, President, Ravel, I have an idea. Issei was raising his arm into the air like a student would in school as Asia watched with curiosity. Sona and Ravel looked back at Issei with mild scowls on each of their faces. Well, for my idea to work, can I please ask you both to sit down over here? Issei smiled nervously. Ravel and Sona stared at one another and eventually nodded. Asia moved onto the bed and behind Issei as she sat kneeling. Sona proceeded to sit on Issei's left while Ravel was on the team's right. Issei was about to speak, however Ravel chose to scoot a bit closer to Issei. Noticing her actions, Sona proceeded to also scoot closer on over toward Issei. The two girls then gave each other a death glare. Ahem, well, this is good, we're sitting down. So, President Ravel and Riser aren't terrible people, even though I've only known them for a short time. Also, Ravel is right, I did save her when we were small. And I know you've always been looking out for me, and I've given you nothing but trouble since joining you, so I don't deserve to ask this of you. Issei looked extremely nervous. Sona reached over and softly held Issei's chin while pointing his face directly at hers. She was smiling warmly as her violet eyes focused deeply into his. Sona spoke in a calm and warm tone. You're not troublesome. Dim-witted, sure, but you're not a bad person or a bad servant. What is it that you request of me, Issei Hyoudou? After you win and get me back, would it be alright if I can still be friends with Ravel? Not quite believing that he actually said that, Issei closed his eyes and prepared for the worst. The blonde devil's blue eyes doubled in size as she could feel her heart suddenly thumping harder deep within her chest. Issei. Sona raises an eyebrow. Oh, is that all? Well, yeah, I guess so. Releasing Issei's chin, Sona simply shrugs. Unknown to Issei and Ravel, Sona was beyond amazed to see how much faith her pawn had in her ability. Without question, Issei's expression conveyed that he was convinced beyond a doubt that Sona Sitri was going to win the rating game. With that, she couldn't refuse his request, even though she found Ravel Phenex rather annoying. Oh wow, okay, that makes me feel so much better. I was worried that if my sister did lose, which she won't, I might not see my senpai hero again. Ravel reached over Issei and took hold of Sona's hand. Thank you for being so generous. So, we can be friends. After an eyebrow twitch, Sona looks over at Issei while showing an infuriating smile. Issei can feel the deadly and invisible knives from Sona's gaze, and it scares him to death. Taking her eyes from her pawn and back onto Ravel, Sona sees the girl giving her a very adorable and pleading smile. Please, senpai Sitri-sama. The little blonde devil squeezes Sona's hand while she continues to plead. Rolling her eyes in defeat as she can't help but admit that the girl was indeed cute, Sona relents. Alright, Ravel, very well. Yay. See that Issei. We aren't arguing anymore and will be the bestest of friends. Ravel used her free arm to take hold of Asia's hand. Best friends. Sona immediately began to glare back at Issei. Hyoudou. Scene, Alice's tea party maid cafe, basement pool. That's right, we got a confession and every little bit of information he has. He's a real monster, President. Akeno was speaking into a floating and red-colored communication circle. He is responsible for the deaths of 17 different families, and that's just here in Kuo. Mind you, I asked how they were each dispatched. After some convincing, he explained in gruesome detail, things that are unspeakable. The Cliffnotes are that Fried Selzen is a home-invading homicidal maniac with a record of sexual assault before and after the deaths of his victims. Also, it turns out that fallen angels are turning against the status quo and joining a cadre class by the name of Cockabale. He seems to be a smell-free, and I don't think we are going to get anything more useful from him. The communication circle pulses in red light. I see. I am currently with my brother and he's heard your report. Thank you, Akeno. Surziches then speaks up. Thank you for bringing this information to my attention. Akeno nods. Of course, Surziches-sama. Might I ask you to do one final and distasteful favor, Akeno? The red circle stops pulsing. Meanwhile, an exhausted and hurt Fried can hear the conversation clearly. He was concerned that his comrades will surely find out that he's a snitch and if they do, he would be in some serious shit. At least if he was locked away in some dungeon, even in hell, at least he'd be safe. That was the best outcome for Fried, he thought. As I have heard about the crimes this man has committed, I hereby sentence Fried Selzen to death. Akeno, you may decide on the method. The communication circle vanished. Fried began to struggle violently, while Akeno turned back around with a very unnerving smile. Ara. Scene, Sona's bedroom, basement level. Knock knock knock. Standing from the bed, Sona releases Ravel's hand and answers the door. Issei was unable to see who was at the door in his position, but he thought it was probably Tsubaki. After a few moments, Sona turned around and looked directly back at Issei. Issei, come here for a moment, please. Sona was oddly soft in her tone. Walking toward the door entrance, Issei was able to spot a smiling Akeno-senpai who was now looking back at him. Out from the earshot of Asia and Ravel, Sona spoke quietly. It's about Fried. Now standing next to the doorway and beside Sona, Issei shrugs. Yeah, what about that asshole? This isn't a good place to talk about it, Issei Hyoudou. Please, join me on a small walk down the hallway, would you? Akeno then playfully winks. Don't worry, I won't bite. Issei looks back at Sona who gives him the go-ahead. Alright, anything you say, Himejima-senpai, haha. Issei grew a lecherous grin. Walking away with Akeno, Issei looked behind him only to see Sona's eyes peering out at him as the door slowly shut. So what did you want to talk about? The teen then turned his attention back onto a smiling Akeno. I've come to understand that you're a brand new devil, and more so, you single-handedly took down a stray exorcist without any training or guidance. Very impressive, Issei. Well done. Akeno continued to smile. Issei nods while weakly smiling back. He was going to kill that girl, Asia, and I also had Ravel with me too, so I didn't have any choice. I see, well then, has your master explained what earthbound peerages do? Aside from raiding games and contracts, that is. Akeno's smile turned into a frown. Issei shook his head while not knowing. We hunt for stray devils. These are weak creatures that were turned into devils and given great power by their masters. However, those creatures usually leave or kill their masters, which is the reason we call them stray devils. Once they leave, the original power bestowed upon them becomes corrupted and slowly warps them into flesh-eating monsters. After such a process, they begin to roam around while hunting innocent humans as food. Our job as peerage members is to exterminate them. Akeno then looks back at Issei with a straight face. Wow, so we are kind of like superheroes, Himejima-senpai. Issei showed great interest in what Akeno was telling him. Akeno takes a deep breath and shows a sad-looking smile. You might put it that way, I suppose. The queen's frown then returns. The man you took down, Fried Selzen. He has been found guilty by our lord and Mouse Surziches. We are to treat him as a stray devil and eliminate him. Issei tilts his head. But isn't he a human? I thought you said we handle those stray devils that you were talking about. And why are you telling me this anyway? A human who has killed countless innocent men, women and children. A human who deems anything or anyone associated with us as a hellworthy sin, worthy of a painful and slow death. A human who rapes his victims, alive or dead. Truly, Issei, from what little I've gathered about you, I'd surely think that you would be one to understand. We aren't ending his life for the fun of it, rather, it is justice for all of his past victims. Akeno was beginning to show a soft and maternal smile, as both of her hands were now resting on Issei's shoulders. Feeling the warmth of her senpai's hands, Issei slowly nodded in understanding. Alright, I get it, he's a piece of shit. So, what do I have to do with anything? Akeno nods. Yes, well, as it stands, I was tasked to execute the monster that is freed. However, the black-haired queen slowly pulls Issei closer to her. I think you should be the one to take responsibility, don't you think? Issei pulls back in a panic. What are you talking about? I'm just a kid. Kicking his ass and straight up killing him are two different things. Akeno looks back at Issei as her eyes widen suddenly. You? Why did you follow us? Issei confusingly looks back at Akeno, who looks to be staring at something behind him. Turning around, Asia was standing a few feet away. She was also silently crying. Issei, I'm sorry, but please. Asia now begins to completely break down and bawl out loud. Running past Akeno, Issei rushed to Asia while not knowing what to do. Freed hurt people. When you found me, that was our first mission together, but I wasn't told what we were actually doing. Issei, those kids. Sob, nobody deserved that. I don't care about what he did to me, but that family. The screams, the pleas. Sob, the moment I intervened, he hurt me until I couldn't move anymore. Issei. Asia felt Issei's arms wrap around her as his face showed an expression of pure rage. Issei replies as his teeth grind. Yes, Asia-chan. Feel freed. Send him straight to hell. Asia then cried into the teen's chest. Issei held Asia for a moment. Akeno quietly speaks up. Well, Issei, it looks to me like you are most definitely going to take responsibility. Scene, Alice's Tea Party Maid Cafe, basement hallway. Glancing back at his senpai, Akeno Himejima, Issei could see that her smile had some deeper meaning behind it. Asia continued to cry into Issei's shirt as her hands gripped his clothing very tightly. Placing a hand over the weeping girl's head, Issei continued to stare back at Akeno with vigor. This is a lesson, isn't it, senpai? Issei spoke quietly and with purpose. Adding a slight smirk to her current smile, Akeno slowly nodded. Very good, Issei Hyoudou. You are a devil now, and with that, you must abide by devil law. Understand that you are not being forced with this task, however. I'll do it. I'll kill the son of a bitch. Issei spoke over his senpai. Akeno nods while placing one of her hands against Issei's cheek. Aren't you just a precious kohai? So protecting, Ara, I just can't help myself, seeing the two of you like that. Might I ask if perhaps you are taken, little kohai? Asia stops crying and immediately scowls at a now giggling Akeno. I was just kidding, just kidding. I only wanted to make sure you were alright, that's all. The black-haired and violet-eyed queen of Ria's peerage then winked at Issei. Was I kidding? Scene, Alice's Tea Party Maid Cafe, basement pool. Walking through the main doors with Akeno, Asia and Issei looked on, only to see a gruesome display. There was Freed, he was dangling from a rope as he looked to be half submerged in water. Floating and cindering volleyballs were randomly spread around the pool itself. The only other person in the room was the school mascot, Kaneko Taoju, who was sitting on a poolside lounge chair while eating a large piece of chocolate cake. Looking back at Freed, Asia and Issei could see random burn marks along with bits of his clothing, still smoking from whatever had happened to him. Issei looks back at Akeno with a mild expression of disgust. Is this what you guys meant by interrogation? What did you do to him? He looks really fucked up. Akeno grins. Don't feel sorry for that pile of shit, or did you forget what he actually is? Before Issei can reply, Asia speaks out. Ravel said that if I were to say a prayer, it would hurt not only me, but other devils who might hear it, so, I won't. But, I can't help but pity such a monster. Ahahaha. Oh my Asia. You've fallen lower than anyone could have ever imagined, a devout nun, becoming a filthy devil despicable. Instantly, Freed began to thrash around in his bindings, while giving Asia a terrifying and disturbing smile, tied along with his tongue, once again, sticking out. Glancing at a table next to the main doors, Issei notices Freed's weapons and gear, specifically the gun. Asia begins to cry again as Akeno looks sad for her. Kaneko was the only one to notice Issei reaching for the light gun as quickly as he could, only to aim toward Freed. Everyone! Kaneko yelled loudly. This brought everyone's attention to Issei. He was standing with a blank look in his eyes as the weapon was pointed toward a now surprised-looking Freed. Asia, Akeno and Kaneko all watch as Issei begins to take one step and then another, closer toward a now struggling Freed Selzen. Asia begins to regret begging her new friend to kill the man who hurt her and so many others. Akeno wonders if her kohai has the willpower to do his part as a devil, though she is pretty sure he will follow through. After getting a good and close look into his determined eyes, there was no doubt about it. Kaneko seemed indifferent, though she never noticed her senpai before until now. Was this the rumored pervert of Kuo Academy? Attempting to keep his eyes on Freed's grinning face, Issei eventually closed them before squeezing the trigger. Bang! An almost blinding flash of light penetrated Freed's skull, instantly killing him. Wanting to drop the filthy weapon, Issei thought better while leaning down and placing the gun onto the floor. Everyone was silent. Standing back up straight, the teen could feel something inside of him had just been lost. Slowly, with his bangs over his eyes, Issei begins to slowly walk out from the pool room. Akeno reached for his shoulder in order to stop him, however he pushed her hand away. "Don't touch me, senpai." Asia nervously ran to Issei's side and silently walked out with him. Both Akeno and Kaneko looked at one another and then back at Fried's body. Was it really necessary for him to do that? Kaneko asks. To end that miserable monster's life? Absolutely. After all, if not for Issei, he probably wouldn't have been found, let alone caught. As it was Armao's order for Fried to be executed, it only felt natural that Issei finished what he had started. Also, he needs to learn responsibility early on, being the Sekiryu. It's one thing to be an average devil, however his sacred gear deprives him of that humble existence. Akeno spoke in a very wise tone. Kaneko nods. I guess if that's the case, then this was nothing more than an eye-opener for the kid. Akeno shrugs. It's no different than exterminating a stray devil. Kaneko then shrugs. Either way, let's clean this up and lift the barrier. I'm tired. Scene, Sona's bedroom, basement level. The door opens as both a strange and quiet-looking Issei and Asia, who was walking behind the teen while looking very sad and worried, walk through. Ravel and Sona stand up from the end of a large bed. Issei? Asia-chan. Is everything okay? Ravel asked with a concerned expression. Not saying a word, Issei looked for a chair to sit in as his bangs covered his eyes. Once he spotted a computer chair, the teen sat down and immediately slumped his body forward while looking at the ground. Asia spoke softly while she maintained her worried expression as she kept her eyes on Issei. Fried has been executed. It's done. Sona, who was purposely keeping quiet while observing Issei in specific, decided it was time to see how he was holding up. Hyoudou. Ravel. Issei quietly spoke while he stared at the wooden floor. Looking back at Sona worryingly, Ravel replied. Yes, Issei. Can we please go back now? I can't face my parents right now. Issei shudders as his arms fold over his shoulders. Sona speaks up as she removes her glasses. Hyoudou, Issei, I didn't ask Akeno to do that. It doesn't matter, President. I just need to go to sleep or something. Issei interrupted. Ravel runs over toward Issei and places one of her arms around his shoulder. I'm sorry, Issei, this was all my fault. I didn't mean to. No, that's not true, Ravel, I asked you to take me. This isn't on you at all. If anything, this is just something that I need some time to cope with. Issei gritted his teeth underneath his overflowing bangs as the wooden floor he was staring at began to look blurry and wavy. A few teardrops hit the floor under the slumped-over teen. Ravel widens her eyes and looks back toward Sona. Asia stands where she is, feeling as though she was a catalyst in all of this, as she insisted on this new senpai to end somebody that hurt her very badly. The blonde nun used all of her will to hold back any tears, as she didn't feel she had the right to cry. Sona, I'm going to take him back. I'll see you at the rating game. Ravel spoke softly as she beckoned Asia to get closer to her. Issei stood from the chair, however Ravel refused to let go of his hand, meanwhile Asia made her way toward the two. Shortly after, the Phoenix heiress created a teleportation circle. Before the three walked through, an apprehensive Sona Sitri darted toward Issei. Pulling some hair from his face, Sona lightly kissed a distraught teen on his forehead. Issei seemed to come to life once that happened. Sona was also smiling at him very warmly, with those very violet eyes, this time unshielded by glasses. I'll see you at the rating game, Issei Hyoudou. Sona took a step backwards while showing a very deep blush, however her smile was now back to her usual resting Sona face. Ravel puffed her cheeks out in jealousy and pulled Issei through with her. Flash. Hello, sister. A very familiar voice greeted the three teleportation circle travelers. Ravel froze where she stood as her hand tightened around Issei's. Riser. As Asia, Issei and Ravel walked out of a dissipating fiery summoning circle, Riser Phenex was sitting at the foot of the bed, with her arms folded under her large chest. Issei then stood in front of both Asia and Ravel, while using his arms to push them closer together and further behind him. It was my fault. Riser, who already has a terrifying grin, simply tilts her head sideways. You're at fault. For what? Keeping his bangs over his eyes, Issei spoke in a flat tone. I wanted to see my parents and Ravel helped me. Riser nods as she begins to cross her legs. And mind on telling me about the little blonde girl? Ravel speaks from behind Issei with a grumpy attitude. Asia is my new bishop. Riser giggles a bit. Oh really? Asia, you say? Well, from behind my toy, she looks kind of cute. Ravel forces her way out from behind Issei while scowling toward Riser. He is not your toy. Riser giggles even more. Now, I'd keep quiet if I were you. Don't want mother to wake up to any of this, now do we? Ravel showed a confused expression. You didn't tell mom already? Riser shakes her head. Why would I do that to my loving sister? After all, I'm sure your poor little bud is still recovering from mother's earlier wrath. Issei, oddly, begins to walk back toward the bed he was sleeping in. Silently, Asia, Ravel and now Riser watch as the teen simply went into the covers and rolled over. Riser looks back at Ravel while shrugging her shoulders in a questioning way. What's up with him? Ravel looks back at the bed and slowly shakes her head while being extraordinarily concerned over Issei's well-being. Let's go back to my room, we can talk there. Ravel then walked toward the door and opened it. Come on. Riser stood from the end of the bed and walked toward the door. Seeing the body under the sheets like that, the older Phenex era stopped walking and stood over the boy. Sleep good, kid. Riser then walked out through the door with Asia following closely behind. Ravel quietly began to close the door before speaking. Issei, good night and I'm sorry. The door shuts. Scene, Ravel's bedroom. He killed a stray exorcist, you say. After he saved your new bishop and protected you? Fried Selzen, nah, never heard of him. But you, Asia Argento. Riser slowly turns her attention from Ravel to now Asia. You have sacred gear. A really incredible one too. I can see why my sister scooped you up like that. Ravel grew a tick mark. She was dying. In fact, she was so badly hurt that even Phoenix tears wouldn't have done much good. Asia nodded while grasping at Ravel's hand. And I am grateful for it. Ravel smiles back at Asia. Thanks bestie he. Riser lays back on Ravel's bed while stretching. Okay, well, that's fine I suppose. Good luck explaining her to mother. Ravel winces. Also, you said that Hyoudou killed a stray exorcist as in, killed him. Both Asia and Ravel replied sadly. Yes. Riser took a deep breath while showing a concerned look of her own. Yeah, he shouldn't be alone right now. Ravel puffs her cheeks out while having an idea where this conversation is headed. And I suppose you are going to heroically volunteer to stay with him then? Am I right? Rolling her eyes, Riser replies. Actually, I was going to volunteer you, sister. Feeling dumbstruck, the younger Phoenix heiress attempts to respond, however Riser continues. Truth be told, I am a hard woman. I'm not good at that kind of soft stuff, you know. Riser begins to blush. Asia has no clue as to what is going on so she stays out of it. Ravel's jaw is agape. Sister, are you for real? Leave Asia with me, I'll introduce her to your peerage, go be with your savior. I'm sure he would like that. Just don't let mom catch you. Riser then sits up while smiling. Are you sleeping? Ravel was nervously opening Issei's guest room door. The teen didn't respond, rather he just rolled over under his blankets. Quietly walking through and closing the door behind her, Ravel then made her way toward the side of the bed and where the mass under the sheets was. Issei, are you awake? Ravel had her arms stretched out as if she was about to pull the covers back. Can you please, just, leave me alone, I'm sorry, but muffled Issei responded, but his voice had a rattle to it, almost as if he was recently crying. The concerned look on Ravel's face was added with a growing red color as her lips began to purse in a frowning expression. Now looking somewhat cross, Ravel pulled back the covers with a bit of force behind it. Issei was lying on his side as both of his arms were wrapped around one of the many pillows that adorned this large bed. His face was obscured by said pillow, however his eyes were visible. Ravel's anger was replaced with pity and sadness the moment it verified her suspicion that he was indeed crying. Oh hell no, I am not leaving you alone. Are you insane? First you get killed by a fallen angel, then you get thrown into a world you know nothing about. Well, all of that happened in less than 24 hours as you say, add the fact that you are dealing with killing somebody. From the look of it, that was your first time taking another's life. Ravel released the blankets and put her arms against her hips as her expression turned unnaturally maternal. Well. Are you going to lie to me again and just say that you want to be left alone? Issei did all but shake his head silently. Thought so, alright, stay put, I'm getting in bed on the other side. Ravel quickly ran to the other side of the bed before diving into the covers. She then slowly moved closer toward Issei as he wasn't facing her. Issei, turn around. Before she knew it, the teen had rolled over and placed both arms around her. As her blue eyes widened in shock, Issei's head was buried in the blonde girl's drill-like hair. I'm sorry. Issei started to silently cry. Slowly, Ravel reciprocated while she placed both of her arms around the distraught and internally defeated teenager turned devil. Oh gosh, it's alright, I've got you. While she had hold of her shivering and broken savior, Ravel felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility for the recent events involving Fried and Asia. Hindsight, the younger Phoenix heiress thought it might have been better to call for her peerage before entering that strange house. But then again, Ravel began to stroke Issei's hair. Then it might have been too late for Asia. Reality was that events transpired as they did, and as a proud member of the House of Phenex, Ravel was going to make damn well sure that both Asia and her, hopefully, future husband would be protected, loved and want for nothing. You protected me, back then, you took care of me, saved my life, even though it was my flames that hurt you, that scarred you. Ravel spoke softly as a single tear fell from her eye. Issei was about to raise his head, however Ravel pulled his face into her neck. Your scars are from my hands and legs as you carried me out right before the building collapsed. Issei, that was my fire. I started the inferno. I couldn't control it and I got lost and I panicked. Ravel began to cry a bit herself. Issei's eyes were open wide while watering. After hearing Ravel's proclamation, the teen softly tightened his hold. It's okay, I wear my scars with pride, you know. It's proof of the life was saved. So don't apologize for my trophy. Issei giggles in between his sobs. Ravel quiets down and decides that she wants to comfort Issei in a more comfortable way as her neck and shoulders were beginning to get a bit numb. Issei, sniffle, would you please move down just a bit? Ravel then began to push down on Issei's head where she was stroking her hair. Following her motion, Issei soon realized that she was moving his head toward her chest as she laid sideways, pulling him into her. Wait, Ravel. I don't know if we should be MMMMPH. With one arm wrapped tightly around Issei's head and the other around his shoulder, Ravel was playing opposite Big Spoon as the teen's face was now in between the blonde short stack's generous cleavage. As one of her legs wrapped around Issei's midsection, Ravel then took a deep breath. Let me take care of you. Just let this happen. It's something I've wanted for quite a long time, even before we were united. Issei, even if my sister loses, which she won't, I want you to be mine, even if I have to share you with Sitri. Issei attempts to respond, however Ravel's breasts refuse to allow the teen to speak. Alright, I'll admit it, your master and I were talking while you were Ravel got nervous and quickly wanted to avoid the death subject. Well, I told her that if Riser wins, because she will, that she would still be allowed to Issei muffles. MMMMPH. Well, I don't know if you know, but she kinda likes you and stuff. Anyway, don't be concerned about the little things, the point is, I said she could, and that made her happy. Well, in response, she extended her own offer, assuming somehow, somewhere Isa were to lose, I would be allowed to well, with you. Ravel was blushing heavily, unknown to a smothered Issei. Anywhere Ravel allows Issei a bit of air as he is now looking up at her with a mildly blank stare. I want you to share yourself with me. Tell me about what hurts. All of it. I may not have the experience to understand everything, and I may come off as arrogant, even though I am amazing and can't help it, Ravel smiles proudly and then catches herself in the act. Well, I don't know what else to say. So talk, Issei. Ravel shows a firm and maternal expression as her blue eyes stare down at Issei. Thinking about her words, a voice took over his mind. Do what this little devil is telling you. She is much smarter than you might give her credit for. In fact, she is leagues ahead of you in that aspect as well as many others. With that, count your blessings and do what Ravel Phenex asks. Oh, now you decided to start speaking to me? What is it that you do with all of your spare time? What do I do, you ask? Well, you little shit, for your information, I am spending a great deal of my time attempting to prevent my power from killing you. So, if I were you, I'd be grateful, squirt. Whatever dude, just don't eat me. So, do what Ravel-chan asks. No matter what it is, do it. PFFT, fine bye. Issei noticed Ravel's expression, which was now one of losing patience. Oh, Ravel, yeah, okay, I'll talk. Squinting suspiciously back down toward a nervous-looking Issei, Ravel slowly smiles. I can tell if you're lying, just so you know. Just remember that I have you in a precarious position, one in which I can easily punish you. Ravel threatens by pulling Issei closer toward her cleavage once more. Gotcha, whatever you say, Ravel. Issei's eyes were locked on Ravel's Valley of Heaven. Enjoying the fact that Issei was being very cooperative, Ravel grew a small yet loving smirk. Are you sure, Hyoudou? Ravel shakes her shoulders a bit, causing her breasts to sway back and forth as she was laying on her side. Issei's attitude has completely changed from severely depressed to now extremely aroused. This short and cute blonde is acting much older than she appears to be. Is this maybe because she's a devil? Wait, are all devils into this kinda stuff? Now that I think about it, Lady Phenex seems to have her certain, fetishes. I wonder if Ravel's happens to coincide with death by spoilage. Well, whatever, I need to focus right now, no, not on those perfectly shaped flesh mounds, but rather, her questions. Issei looks back up and nods. Alright then, let's start with that fallen angel. What happened? Ravel then softly leaned Issei against her while she began to comb through his hair with her fingers. Taking a very deep breath and remembering what his dragon told him, Issei began in a quiet voice. Her name was Yuma. She was this random girl who just showed up out of the blue, asking me out on a date. Without thinking twice, I agreed. I suppose my fate was sealed after that, heh. Issei swallowed a dry gulp. So, we went on this date that she had planned out. Little did I know that both Rias and Sona senpai were trailing me, watching me. When Yuma showed her true colors, Issei grinds his teeth. The bitch looking back up, Issei felt a soft kiss on his forehead and that prompted him to continue. Well, she tried to kill me, though, now that I really think hard about it, she actually did end up doing that. I guess I did actually die. Anyway, Sona and Tsubaki took care of Rainer, oh, that was Yuma's real name, and after that, I was back at school. I don't remember much after that, aside from eating breakfast at, I'm guessing is Sona's restaurant. Well, and then you guys, your big sis and you, Ravel. Issei got quiet while his eyes looked very relaxed. I see. And then there is the matter of Fried Selzen. Ravel quietly spoke. Issei nods as his face shows a deep frown. Yeah, well, you know what happened in that fucked up house, but then, after we went back with Sona, you executed an enemy. Ravel adds. Issei nods quietly. And you've never killed anyone before until now, right? Ravel asks in an empathetic way. No. Issei closes his eyes. Yeah, that's a lot to deal with in less than 2 days, for anyone really. Ravel agrees with herself. Okay, well then, I have one last question for you. Consider it a bonus round. If you answer correctly, I will comfort you and keep you safe tonight, no questions asked. Ravel smiles very warmly. Issei nods. That actually sounds really nice, thanks Ravel. Ravel grins. Don't thank me yet. Haha. The younger Phenex heiress reaches into her nightie pockets and pulls out 2 pairs of nylon rope. If it turns out that you lie to me, then I get to use you any way that I'd like. Ravel tightens her hold with her remaining arm against Issei. Fine, okay, Ravel, what's your question? Issei can't take his eyes away from the ropes in Ravel's other hand. Are you a virgin? Ravel smiles innocently. In auto mode, Issei answers without thinking. Hell no. Ravel's grin is almost terrifying at this point. Scene, Lady Phenex's chambers. We see a very dimly lit room, however it is very fancy. Gold and silver adorn the bedroom as the fireplace lit the walls with an eerie cast of shadows. Yes, Lady Phenex, they just arrived moments ago. Isabella was kneeling at the lady's bed. Meanwhile, the head of the home herself was leaning against a large set of pillows as she stared down at her older daughter's servant. I see, very well, you are dismissed. I will deal with all of this first thing in the morning. The lady then snapped her fingers as Isabella rose to her feet. End of the here. So that's it for today's video guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.